before. For the year, average monthly job growth is less than a third of what it was just last year. None of it adding up to a convincing argument that the economy is improving, no matter how much the president or vice president insist otherwise.
I promise you, there is no person more impatient to solve the affordability crisis than Donald J. Trump, the President of the United States. You know why energy prices are lower? You know why gas prices have come down so much? Because we finally got an American president who wants to invest in American energy and American workers.
They talk about affordability, and we're the ones that are bringing the prices down. We were given the worst inflation in our country's history, and we're bringing the prices down.
I want to bring in Axios senior economics reporter Courtney Brown, Mark McKinnon, an advisor to President George W. Bush and Senator John McCain, as well as creator of The Circus. Michael Hardaway is here with me, communications director for Democratic Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and publisher of the Hardaway Wire. Okay, Courtney, let's start with these new numbers. Unemployment rate up, but not at historic highs. But what does the data tell you about where the economy is and maybe where it's heading?
We're calling it the meh jobs market because I think that nicely encapsulates what we saw in the jobs report this morning. Jobs growth is kind of just meh. The unemployment rate jump, of course, there are some statistical quirks associated with the government shutdown that might be pushing that number up. But the fact of the matter is, it is really difficult to get a job right now. And that is weighing on consumer sentiment. So while the labor market is not falling apart, there's clearly some weakness here that consumers across America are feeling.
Mark, the president and vice president have been consistently optimistic, even though I will note that J.D. Vance just called it an affordability crisis, something that the president has said is a hoax. But there is a new bank rate report that shows economic pessimism is setting in. 1 in 3 say things will get worse in 2026. It takes time to turn these kinds of numbers around. So I don't know, maybe would a $2,000 check, as the president has proposed, do that? What do you see happening here politically as a result of these numbers?
Well, first of all, Chris, that's some real messaging confusion. Is it a crisis or is it a hoax? At least they're headed in the right direction as to what the American people think. They think it's a crisis. And Chris, the interesting thing about economics and how people feel about their economic situation is that's really important politically, because what's important in an election year is not how people are feeling at the moment, although that is important. What's really critical is how they think they're going to feel in the future. And what you're telling me right now is that this data is projecting forward and people have a very pessimistic outlook. So the fact that J.D. Vance is saying, oh, just wait till next year. Well, people are looking at next year and saying, I think I'm going to be worse off next year. So they've got to do something much greater focused from a policy perspective about making people feel better, not just now, but how they're going to feel a year from now, including and especially what's driving a lot of this, I think, which is the health care subsidies.
Yeah, that's on docket. Michael, the fact that the president is going on the road and J.D. Vance on the road, I think are kind of implicit indications that they know that they need to make their point or try to sell their economic policies. They're going to states he's won. Right. You can see why, though. In North Carolina, which Trump won by 3 points in 2024, his approval rating has gone from basically flat to 7 points underwater. That's just in 2 months. Is this move, which was pushed by Susie Wiles to, get the president out there and talking, smart? Can you convince people who maybe voted for him and want Trump to succeed to give him more time, to give Republicans in Congress more time?
What exactly are you selling? That the economy is a wreck? That more than 7 million people are unemployed?
They're selling patience.
Oh, really? So back to Mark's point earlier, there are 2 problems here. The numbers don't match. You've got a 4-year high in terms of unemployment. Last time we had that, what we were in the middle of a pandemic, right? So that's one thing. But also it feels like the economy is bad. This is his biggest problem. When it comes to how people think about the economy, they say it doesn't feel good. And right now, it doesn't feel good for anyone if you're a working class person in America. The numbers are the numbers. You have more than 7 million people unemployed. That is problematic. You have electricity up 13% just this year under Donald Trump's second presidency. That is problematic. He has to do something about that. You can't just go talk to people. You need solutions. We have a healthcare crisis. Millions of people are going to lose healthcare because of Donald Trump. So when you go to North Carolina and you go to Pennsylvania, what exactly are you selling? He has nothing to sell.
So, Courtney, I want to read from Axios yesterday, quote, along with hoped-for reductions in inflation, lower interest rates, and continued lower gas prices, Trump and his inner circle are counting on citizens benefiting from money-saving initiatives, from lax fuel economy standards to his prescription drug plans to sweeping deregulation. I mean, do they have reason to be optimistic that things could improve by next year, perhaps dramatically enough, given the midterms?
Really important story by my colleague Mark Caputo, that the White House sees 2026 as this potential miracle for economic growth. Obviously, there's no guarantee that actually happens. I'm hearing from folks on Wall Street who similarly feel there is some optimism to be had in 2026. But again, there is this perception gap right now. No matter what the economic data says in the months ahead, I feel like consumer sentiment, how people feel about the economy, is not going to improve. Remember, we're coming off of a multi-year inflation shock. Consumers don't care about how quickly prices are rising. Consumers care about price level, and price levels are still high, and it takes time for that to come down.
Mark, for Trump and his advisors, Axios says that they have an almost messianic belief the economy will take off in the first quarter of next year. But if you were listening to the president, you'd assume it was already happening, because I want to play what he said just yesterday.
We're bringing those prices down, and they're coming down quickly. Energy is coming way down, and if you look, gasoline prices are hitting in many locations $1.99 a gallon. Nobody thought they'd see that.
I mean, in truth, the new report shows energy prices are actually up significantly. And while there may be a gas station here or there with gas under $2, the average price nationwide is closer to $3. A national energy organization just came out with an estimate that Americans will pay $84 more for heating this winter than last. So even if people are optimistic, I'm trying to figure out from a messaging standpoint how telling people they're feeling in a way or experiencing something that they're not helps. Then again, messaging wise, do you go back to I feel your pain? What do you do if you're running for Congress and you're a Republican, Mark?
Well, it's much better to take the Bill Clinton approach, which is what you just said, to acknowledge their pain and say, I feel your pain. Trump has been saying, your pain's not real, it's a hoax. And don't believe your eyes, don't believe your pocketbook. Believe me that things are better. You mentioned earlier, just a moment ago, that the administration is talking about the miracle for next year. Well, that's a strategy of hope. They're acknowledging that it would be a miracle. So that's the big problem. The macro problem here, Chris, I think, is that this goes back to sort of the fundamental nature of Trump's whole approach, which gets back to make America great again. He has this notion, this retro notion, that he was going to bring manufacturing back to America. And as part of that, he adopted a tariff strategy that was popularized in the late 1800s. So he's kind of dealing in an economic philosophy and approach that's a century years old. That I don't think applies to the modern economy. And he is suffering the consequences of it, and people are seeing right through it.
Well, here's what I'll say. We had somebody who's sitting on set with me, who shall not be named, who came out here and tried to convince me that the Cleveland Browns were on the upswing. Things are looking great for us. So thank you for trying.
Good metaphor.
Courtney Brown, Mark McKinnon, Michael Hardaway. I don't know where that came from, Michael. I just do not. Thank you. Up next, where the manhunt for the gunman in the Brown University.
The War and Peace Report by Mamie Goodman. The Pentagon says it's blown up 3 more boats in the Eastern Pacific, killing 8 people. Black and white video posted to social media Monday by U.S. Southern Command shows 3 vessels erupting in flames. The Pentagon claimed without evidence the boats were carrying drugs in international waters. The latest strikes bring the Pentagon's announced death toll to 95 since early September. The ACLU and other rights groups have condemned the strikes as murder, and state-sanctioned killings of civilians denied due process. The attacks come as President Trump signed an executive order Monday declaring fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction.
No bomb does what this is doing. 200 to 300,000 people die every year that we know of. So we're formally classifying fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction.
Virtually no illicit fentanyl comes to the United States from either Colombia or Venezuela. Last year, the CDC reported about 48,000 deaths from synthetic opioids, not the 200,000 to 300,000 deaths claimed by Trump. Meanwhile, Venezuela's government has accused Trinidad and Tobago of participating in piracy after it aided the U.S. government's seizure of a Venezuelan oil tanker last week. Trinidad and Tobago officials said Monday they would grant U.S. forces access to the Caribbean nation's airports in coming weeks as the Pentagon continues to build up forces ahead of a possible attack on Venezuela. On Capitol Hill, members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus are urging fellow House lawmakers to back resolutions seeking to prevent President Trump from launching an unauthorized war on Venezuela. In Gaza, another winter storm's worsened the humanitarian catastrophe faced by tens of thousands of displaced Palestinians who've been forced to shelter in tents for a third consecutive winter. Civil defense crews are struggling to reach people trapped under the rubble of homes that have been damaged by Israeli air attacks before this week's storms caused them to collapse. With no proper housing, many Palestinians have been forced to choose between living in unsafe homes or makeshift tents.
A citizen's alternative to leaving this building is the risk of a collapsed tent. A tent, without a doubt, cannot be safe for citizens. It cannot protect them from the cold, the winter, floods, stray dogs, rodents, or diseases. Therefore, all the alternatives currently available to citizens in Gaza are dangerous and difficult.
The UN's Migration Agency reports nearly 800,000 displaced Palestinians are at heightened risk of dangerous flooding in low-lying, rubble-filled areas of Gaza. At least 14 people lost their lives in a winter storm last week. Israel's blocked humanitarian aid shipments of tents bound for Gaza, claiming the aluminum poles used to erect them are a dual-use item that could be repurposed for military activities. Meanwhile, Israel continues to violate the October 10th ceasefire agreement. Witnesses say Israeli military vehicles opened fire today on the northern parts of the Barej refugee camp in central Gaza, while other areas inside the military-controlled Yellow Line came under airstrikes and artillery fire. This comes as new satellite images show Israel continues to demolish buildings and areas it's occupied since the ceasefire. Later in the broadcast, we'll speak with the award-winning investigative journalist Aaron Roston about his new report in The Guardian titled, "They're Trying to Get Rich Off It. U.S. Contractors Vie to Rebuild Gaza," with Alligator Alcatraz team in the lead. In Sydney, Australia, thousands of people gathered near the site of Sunday's mass shooting in Bondi Beach to mourn the 15 people killed in an attack on the Jewish community on the first night of Hanukkah. At least 22 people remain hospitalized. The Sydney Opera House was illuminated with a Hanukkah menorah as memorial events honoring the victims were held across Australia. On Tuesday, the Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, said the father and son duo behind the massacre had traveled to the Philippines before the assault and were inspired by the Islamic State movement.
It would appear that there is evidence that this was inspired by a terrorist organisation, by ISIS. Now, some of the evidence which is being procured, including the presence of Islamic State flags in the vehicle that has been seized, are a part of that. Radical perversion of Islam is absolutely a problem.
A Pakistani man living in Australia who shares the same name as one of the Bondi Beach gunmen says he fears for his safety after he was misidentified in widely shared social media posts that were amplified by mainstream news outlets. 30-year-old Naveed Akram of New South Wales says his photographs circulated widely on platforms, including X and Facebook, alongside accusations he was one of the killers, and that his request to have the post taken down went unanswered. Some of those false reports were then published by news outlets in India and Israel. In Rhode Island, the manhunt for the gunman who killed 2 students and injured 9 others at Brown University Saturday has entered its 4th day. The 2 students who were killed have been identified as 18-year-old Mohammed Aziz Amirzokhov and 19-year-old Ella Cook. The FBI is offering a $50,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of a new person of interest. This comes as FBI Director Kash Patel is facing criticism for posting on social media to promote the agency's work in tracking down a person of interest in the shooting prematurely, only to release the man from custody hours later. In the wake of right-wing activist Charlie Kirk's assassination, Patel also claimed on social media a shooter was in custody even though the shooter had not yet been apprehended. We'll speak with one of the survivors, Brown University student Zoe Weissman, after headlines. This is her 2nd school massacre. We'll speak to her in Parkland, Florida, where her family lives. She was in middle school when the Valentine's Day massacre at Stoneham High School happened 7 years ago. Federal prosecutors in California have indicted 4 members of a left-wing group named the Turtle Island Liberation Front on charges they plotted to bomb multiple targets in Orange County and Los Angeles beginning New Year's Eve.
This investigation was initiated in part due to the September 2025 executive order signed by President Trump to root out left-wing domestic terror organizations in our country, such as Antifa and other radical groups like the Turtle Island Liberation Front.
The indictment relies heavily on a paid FBI confidential informant. It was announced by Bill Aseli, a former California Republican lawmaker who the Trump administration named interim U.S. attorney for the Central District of California in April. He's now serving as first assistant U.S. attorney after a federal judge ruled in October he'd been serving unlawfully as the district's top prosecutor since July, since he was never confirmed by the Senate. The indictment comes just days after FBI National Security Branch Operations Director Michael Glasheen appeared before the House Committee on Homeland Security, where he struggled to back up his claims that Antifa was the primary concern and the most immediate violent threat facing the United States. This is Glasheen being questioned by Democratic Congressmember Benny Thompson.
We share the same view. When you look at the data right now, you look at the domestic terrorist threat that we're facing right now, what I see from my position is that's the most immediate violent threat that we're facing on the domestic side.
So where is Antifa headquartered?
What we're doing right now with the organization.
Where in the United States does Antifa exist? Yeah. If it's a terrorist organization and you've identified it as number 1.
We are building out the infrastructure right now.
So what does that mean?
The Department of Veterans Affairs has announced plans to eliminate up to 35,000 health care jobs this month. Many of the targeted positions are currently unfilled and include doctors, nurses, and support staff. The agency has already lost 30,000 workers this year. The advocacy organization Vote Vets said, quote, "It is abundantly clear that Republicans and the Trump administration want to strangle the VA until it all gets privatized," unquote. In public health news, measles cases are continuing to rise across the United States. According to the CDC, the number of confirmed measles cases has topped 1,900 this year, higher than any year since the U.S. declared the disease eliminated in 2000. In South Carolina, there were 129 confirmed cases this month. 250 people are quarantining. This comes as Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. continues to express skepticism about vaccinating children. Meanwhile, in California, Governor Gavin Newsom has appointed 2 prominent scientists, Dr. Susan Manaras and Dr. Deborah Howry, who left the CDC earlier this year to help lead the state's new Public Health Network Innovation Exchange. Dr. Manaras, the former director of the the CDC, was fired less than a month into her tenure after she clashed with the administration over vaccine policy. The CDC's former chief medical officer, Dr. Harry, resigned shortly after Menares was fired. President Trump is suing the BBC for $10 billion over edits to a speech he gave to his supporters January 6, 2021, before they stormed the Capitol. Tim Davie, the BBC's Director General, and Deborah Turness, the head of BBC News, resigned over the edit last month. It follows similar suits by Trump against big media firms. Earlier this year, ABC agreed to pay Trump $15 million to settle a defamation lawsuit he brought over comments made by anchor George Stephanopoulos. Trump also reached a $16 million settlement with Paramount, the parent company of CBS News, after he claimed an interview with Vice President Kamala Harris was selectively edited. And in California, Rob Reiner's son, Nick, has been arrested on suspicion of murder in the stabbing deaths of his parents at their home in Los Angeles. On Monday, President Trump provoked widespread outrage after he blamed the killing of Rob and Michelle Reiner on Rob Reiner's anti-Trump views. On social media, Trump wrote, quote, Rob Reiner, a tortured and struggling but once very talented movie director and comedy star, has passed away together with his wife Michelle, reportedly due to the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding, and incurable affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome. Those comments drew backlash even from some members of Trump's own party. Kentucky Republican Congressmember Thomas Massey wrote, quote, regardless of how you felt about Rob Reiner, this is inappropriate and disrespectful discourse about a man who was just brutally murdered. I guess my elected GOP colleagues, the VP and White House staff, will just ignore it because they're afraid. I challenge anyone to defend it, the Republican Congress member said. At the White House, President Trump doubled down on his attacks on the now-deceased Rob Reiner.
Mr. President, a number of Republicans have denounced your statement on Truth Social after the murder of Rob Reiner. Do you stand by that post?
Well, I wasn't a fan of his at all. He was a deranged person as far as Trump is concerned. I was not a fan of Rob Reiner at all in any way, shape, or form. I thought he was very bad for our country.
Not get that from our president because he has none of it to give. Instead, we got a fool rambling about nonsense. We got a brief moment of respect for our friends in Australia. We got a brief moment of condolence followed by a things happen for the students at Brown. And for Rob and Michelle Reiner, we got this post. A very sad thing happened last night in Hollywood. Rob Reiner, a tortured and struggling but once very talented movie director and comedy star, has passed away, together with his wife, Michelle, reportedly due to the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding, and incurable affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome, sometimes referred to as TDS. He was known to have driven people crazy by his raging obsession of President Donald J. Trump, with his obvious paranoia reaching new heights as the Trump administration surpassed all goals and expectations of greatness, and with the golden age of America upon us, perhaps like never before. May Rob and Michelle rest in peace. Just when you think he can't go any lower, he somehow finds a way to do that. His description of what happened, of course, is not at all what happened. And this is exactly what I've spoken about before, this rush to pin the tail on the donkey in pursuit of the Trump-friendly narrative, not to mention blaming his death on the fact that he is an outspoken liberal, insulting someone who's just been murdered, who leaves children behind without having any idea of what actually happened. It's so hateful and vile. When I first saw it, I thought it was fake. My wife showed it to me this morning. I was like, well, even for him, that seemed like too much, but nothing is ever too much for him. Of course, you won't see the Fox News gang screaming about this one, but a couple of Republicans did, to their credit, two of them, I think. And so a few hours later, a White House reporter gave Trump the chance to take another shot to act like a human being.
A number of Republicans have denounced your statement on Truth Social after the murder of Rob Reiner. Do you stand by that post?
Well, I wasn't a fan of his at all. He was a deranged person as far as Trump is concerned. He said He knew it was false. In fact, it's the exact opposite, that I was a friend of Russia, controlled by Russia. You know, it was the Russia hoax. He was one of the people behind it. I think he hurt himself in career-wise. He became like a deranged person, Trump derangement syndrome. So I was not a fan of Rob Reiner at all, in any way, shape, or form. I thought he was very bad for our country. Yeah.
That corroded brain is in charge of our lives. If you voted for that, it's okay to reconsider. It's perfectly fine. And I have to say, I know from my personal interactions with Rob Reiner that he would want us to keep pointing out the loathsome atrocities that continue to ooze out of this sick and irresponsible man's mouths. And so we're going to do that over and over again until the rest of us wake up. And then
The Epstein Files are due Friday, December 19th, and either we are going to see them or there is going to be one heck of a fight about it. I'm Ari Melber, lawyer, journalist. You can subscribe to my YouTube breakdowns. This video is going to break down exactly what is required under the new federal law, the Epstein Transparency Act, and what we should expect to see. So let's get right to it. This law is different and stronger than some so-called transparency requirements because it immediately demands the government, in this case largely the Trump DOJ, release these materials online altogether Friday. There are some understandable exceptions, like protecting victims, and I'll talk about that in a sec. But the main thing here is this is not one of those reports that goes to Congress and then gets fought over or redacted or diluted over there in the political branch. This stuff is supposed to come right out. So let me read to you from the law itself. There's been a lot of talk about Epstein in this fight and what could happen. But the bottom line here, and it's kind of interesting because if you remember fights about, say, the Mueller report or past investigative reports from the DOJ, there is often a process where they finish the stuff, then they hand the stuff over to Congress, or they review it internally in DOJ, so the prosecutor finishes it and hands it up to the Attorney General or over to Congress, and then there's a delay or a debate about what comes out and how much. Here the law is stronger. It says no later than 30 days after this law, which is Friday, December 19th, the Attorney General, because it requires the DOJ's leader, the Attorney General, to execute this, quote, must make publicly available in a searchable and downloadable format all unclassified records, documents, communications, and investigative materials in the possession of DOJ, including the FBI, which is technically a branch of DOJ, and U.S. attorneys' offices, and that relate to, and then it lists a bunch of categories. I've done actually a different video breaking down those categories, which is the substance, things like the Epstein investigation, the Maxwell investigation, what happened with Epstein's death, flight records. So there's a bunch of stuff in there that's breaking down the topics. But the global point here, and this is Section 2, it's called Release of the Documents Relating to Epstein, is that they have to come out in public Friday. So either the DOJ does that, shows that it's trying to do that, all documents, most documents, people can debate it, but there's a pretty understandable set of materials of interest here, and Congress is the one requiring it, and they made Trump sign it when he lost that big clash. So either they drop that by the end of Friday night and show that they're complying in some sense, or they don't.
The Apple Store in Portland and the Apple Store in South Lake, Texas, also both bedeviled by protesters in the last few days, telling the company to put back on the App Store the app that's called IceBlock, which helps people alert their neighbors about where Trump's immigration agents have been seen operating. The Trump administration told Apple to take IceBlock out of the App Store, and they did. People protesting all over the country against Apple and against Apple CEO Tim Cook for the company caving like that. Put IceBlock back in the App Store. People protested against President Trump as he arrived at the Army-Navy game this weekend. Don't obey illegal orders. No war crimes with my tax dollars. Baltimore says no to tyranny. People today rolled out a huge photo. Look at that. A huge photo of Trump and Jeffrey Epstein rolled out on the lawn on the National Mall just across from the White House. As some iteration of the Epstein files are finally due to be released this week on Friday, and as a new Reuters poll shows that the proportion of Americans who believe that Donald Trump didn't know about Epstein's crimes has fallen now below 20%. Did you know about Epstein? Do you think Trump knew about Epstein's alleged crimes before they were public? No, I'm sure Trump didn't know that. Less than 20% of the public now believes that. I feel like everybody in the national news media is cottoning now to the fact that Trump's approval ratings, not just in general, but on specific issues and all the issues that are most important to him, Trump's approval ratings are just cratering. I feel like the national media is finally sort of figuring that out. You know, that the country, broadly speaking, is really quite sharply against President Trump at this point. That said, I am not sure my brothers and sisters in the national media have quite cottoned to the fact of what that looks like, even in red state local media markets like, say, Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm not sure everybody coast to coast has quite realized that what that cratering approval rating for Trump and his continued every day stepping on new rakes and doing new things that are radically unpopular with the American people. I'm not sure people have quite figured out that that translates to primetime local news coverage in Oklahoma. That looks like this.
Protesters with indivisible Tulsa County say they are wishing for things like a united America, affordable food prices, and peace in Ukraine. Indivisible Tulsa County co-leader Susan Young explained why the organization felt the need to speak out Saturday afternoon.
The economy needs to improve, the affordability thing, although the administration doesn't really like us talking about that, it is a big deal. People don't like being told how many dolls they should buy for their children or what they need to give up for Christmas.
At a speaking engagement earlier this week, President Trump talked about affordability, saying, quote, "You don't need $37 for your daughter. 2 or 3 is nice, but you don't need $37.
I just love the straight up local news reporter. And quote, $2 or $3 is nice, but you do not need $37.
Daughter, 2 or 3 is nice. Saying, quote, "You don't need $37 for your daughter. 2 or 3 is nice, but you don't need $37.
I just love the straight up local news reporter. And quote, $2 or $3 is nice, but you do not need $37.
Today, I'm here with Tara Palmieri, who has been a reporter that has been on the Epstein story for a decade at least. I want to ask her some questions regarding the victims. Tara, thank you for being on. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. It's such a pleasure to be on your show. I'm a fan, so I'm happy to be here.
I've digested everything you do over on Substack with the red letter. It's excellent. One thing, and this, I didn't even have this on my topic because I wanted to talk to you about, but when this whole story first came out, I was like, who is Ghislaine Maxwell? What kind of woman would do this to little girls? And then I found all the information on her father and how she was raised. And if you'll just hit the highlights, 2 or 3 highlights of what his behavior was like for the audience.
He was a disgusting person. The Power, the Maxwell series is almost like a Succession type series because he was a powerful media baron. I mean, he owned the New York Daily News. He owned the Mirror, which is a huge influential newspaper in the UK. He owned MTV Europe, Paragon Press, Macmillan. I mean, he was larger than life. His rival at the time was Rupert Murdoch, and they fought for publication. So think of her as the daughter of Rupert Murdoch, as Elizabeth Murdoch. I mean, that's how powerful her family was. And he died mysteriously off the side of a yacht. He was thought to be a spy for Mossad, which is the Israeli intelligence agency. But in the meantime, he was really quite vile. And the people that we interviewed for this podcast that worked for him described a man that treated people around him terribly, including his own daughter, Ghislaine Maxwell, frequently bringing her to tears, putting her down, telling her that she's not smart, but at the same time praising her for her beauty and for her charm and for being like him. He was obviously a narcissist, but he would do things like urinate off the side of his his launch pad, his helicopter launch pad, was at the top of the building that he owned in the UK. And then he would use hand towels that were communal for his behind and then put them down. He would throw food at people. He was entirely disparaging, just really not a great guy. I mean, even Tina Brown wrote about Ghislaine Maxwell talking about how he would beat her up. I often wondered if they had some sort of disturbing relationship that might be borderline, sexual abuse. I don't have any hard facts to suggest that, but it just feels like there's something weird about it. I mean, at the same time, his former assistant told me that they would meow at each other on the phone. So they had this very close bond, and he would bring her to parties and treat her as if she was his wife, and marvel at her beauty in kind of the same way that Trump does with Ivanka. And, he named his yacht the Lady Ghislaine after her. This is the yacht he mysteriously died off of. So they had a lot of weird issues. But when he died, because he was defrauding pensioners at the Mirror and was in debt, she was left with nothing. And so she went from being a princess, going to Oxford, being royalty almost, to having nothing. And that's where Jeffrey Epstein steps in. And I think sometimes her desperation for the high life to resume that level that she was at with her father drew her to Jeffrey Epstein, because people I've interviewed, like Jeffrey Epstein's houseman, Juan Alessi, said that Ghislaine used to cry in the car when she drove around looking for young girls to procure and groom. And she would say she hates him because he would put her down and call her stupid, sort of like her father did, but she couldn't leave him. She felt she couldn't leave him. I mean, I think there was and then she had put it in a court file that Jeffrey Epstein promised to provide for her financially for the rest of her life. So what does that mean? I mean, it seems to me that he was her financial backer in exchange for procuring, molesting, grooming as many as 1,000 victims. According to the FBI.
And she participated in it. She didn't only procure them, but from what I've read, she participated in some of the abuse, correct?
Yeah. I mean, Virginia Giuffre testified that the first time she arrived at Jeffrey Epstein's house, Ghislaine Maxwell found her, by the way, at Mar-a-Lago, where she was working at the spa at 16, brought her back to Jeffrey Epstein's house, and Ghislaine was the one that took off her panties and was involved in the sexual abuse in the house. Same thing with Annie Farmer, who said that Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey were in the same room, and it was Ghislaine that fondled her. And so, she was involved in this just as much as Jeffrey. And I just think she used the fact that she was this beguiling, posh British woman with this cute little dog that she called G-Max, a little Yorkie, to bring girls in. And she used that to trap them. And I wrote this piece for Politico called The Women Who Enabled Jeffrey Epstein. And it's a pyramid, and Ghislaine is at the top of it. But, you don't walk into a 50-something-year-old man's house as a teenage girl without feeling a comfort. And that comfort came from the fact that there were so many adult women around Jeffrey Epstein, and Ghislaine Maxwell was at the top of that. And she lured them in, and she actually had a real talent for smelling desperation and being able to promise people that their dreams could be made true. And in the case of Virginia was reading a book about how to become a masseuse, and she said, I've got a dream job for you. A wealthy man is going to pay you to travel around the world with him and learn how to be a masseuse. And this is a girl who, by the way, was being sexually molested by her own father and living in poverty in a trailer. So,
yeah. Well, I read Virginia's book, and I was heartbroken by it because I guess, as cynical as I am, I wanted a happy ending for her, and she didn't get it. And there were so many girls in her position that I think we forget how traumatized they are for their entire lives. And it's my understanding that Virginia is not the only one of these survivors who has taken her own life. Hasn't there been more than one?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, there are many of them, and they've done it in different ways. for example, Courtney Wild, who's Jane Doe 1 in the case against Jeffrey Epstein, she is still alive, but nearly died. I mean, she got a settlement from Jeffrey, a civil settlement. I think, I'm not entirely sure what it was, but it was enough for her to buy a house. And she ended up spending all of the money on drugs and alcohol and ending up in a actual like supermax prison in Florida. Okay. While Jeffrey Epstein was in a county jail. Like, it's just crazy. And so she used the settlement because she felt like she was being paid again for her services, like a prostitute.
Right.
Even though she showed up at his house with braces as like a 14-year-old. And so many of these women are tormented by it. And then they use drugs, they use alcohol, they take their lives, and they don't feel better by the money. So this whole idea that it's some sort of money grab, I think a lot of them see that actually the money is not actually what they want. They want justice. Like, they want to feel like their pain was worth something. And I was really impressed by Courtney because she fought the Crime Victims' Rights Act case, which ended up being the propeller of really the journalism that Julie K. Brown did, with Brad Edwards was Courtney's lawyer. He put together this whole case claiming that the government, through this sweetheart deal, never actually told the victims about the sweetheart deal, and therefore it was invalid, and reopened the case. And so, like, what she did was incredible. I mean, again, another person who has been through so much, has shown so much fortitude and suffered, and is still out there. I mean, I saw her on Capitol Hill and I was just like, wow, you're here, you're doing it. Yeah, it's incredible.
Let me ask you this. I've read so many things about how Ghislaine would say to these survivors, I need you to do for him what you did to Jeffrey. So it was a procurement for other men throughout the scheme. How aware were these girls that was coming? Or was it just like, I mean, I think I read that Virginia was like, oh, she's having a great time, she's doing all this with Prince Andrew, and then it's like, you need to do for him what you do for Jeffrey. So that was part of the scheme, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it was a trafficking operation, and it wasn't just for Jeffrey Epstein. Some of the girls were only at Jeffrey Epstein's once and were abused and never came back. Some returned. It's really, I think, a lot about grooming and trafficking, their age, their family situation. Like, some people are just, especially young girls that come from broken households, they're more likely to be abused and trafficked and be in the kind of situations where this would happen. It's particularly the girls that came over from Eastern Europe. There were a lot of them. His best friend had a modeling agency and he co-owned it. It was called MC Squared. It was with Jean-Luc Brunel, who, by the way, mysteriously died in prison by hanging himself. And they brought over a lot of young girls from Eastern Europe and took their passports away. They're in completely vulnerable situations, working for Jeffrey Epstein as essentially sex slaves. Like, he would refer to them as sex slaves. And what were they supposed to do? And so, yeah, that was part of it. Like, they had to also service his friends. And it's vile. I mean, this is what happens not just to, this happens unfortunately, sex trafficking is a real problem in this country. And I think, and all over the world, but this is highlighting it because of the vastness of it and the level in which the clients are so high level, heads of financial institutions, academia, politics, that's what's brought it to the forefront. But sex trafficking is a real problem. It's just not, it's in the shadows, unfortunately.
Right. And this case brought it up. I remember my son said, Bill Clinton's on this plane all the time with this famous sex trafficker. And I was like, and he was like in high school at the time. He's grown now. And I was like, if Bill Clinton were on a plane with a sex trafficker, it would be the front page news of every story. And it turned out he was right. Like,
it was in page 6. It was in a gossip
right. I mean, 5 years later, this whole thing, and I'm just like, How have we ignored this for so long? One thing that
the New York Post wrote about it, but I do think that that shows you how powerful the Clinton media machine is, that they were able to quash this story for so long from the mainstream press. Like, that is scary to me, and shows you also how much Epstein owned the press.
Yeah.
And Bill Clinton and his family owned the press, and why the story was allowed to remain quiet for so long. So that's my take on why your son read it, because he was probably reading alternate press.
Right.
But mainstream media wouldn't go near it.
Right. As they still do now, but that's a whole different topic for another day. I've been fascinated by, and I've asked different attorneys, but were the girls aware they were being videotaped having sex with these men while they were at Jeffrey Epstein's properties?
You know, that's a really good question. I have heard from survivors that they saw cameras everywhere and assumed that they were being recorded. You can see them even in the photographs from the New York Times inside of Jeffrey Epstein's townhouse. There's a camera in every corner. You could claim they're security cameras, but footage from security cameras compromise.
But
and
to your
you don't usually
knowledge,
put a security camera inside of a bedroom.
Right. Why would you need a security camera in a bedroom? And then we heard Howard Lutnick say, well, he recorded everything and he bribed people with these videotapes. So my question, I guess, is, as we've seen in other cases of powerful men that recorded sex, they have been threatened. I'm going to put this out publicly, the sex tape. Did he threaten these young girls like that? Or were they kind of knew it was going on, but not aware of what happened afterwards?
I don't think the girls understood the whole power dynamics and the power plays at hand. Some of them just didn't really recognize these men. I mean, I don't think women could necessarily recognize, a 14-year-old or 15-year-old wouldn't necessarily recognize a Marvin Minsky who was on the property, who's a academic, or even someone like Bill Richardson that, Virginia Giuffre says she was trafficked too. She alleged that. Or, Senator Mitchell, or, others that were around him. These are people that aren't household names. Think about when you were 14 or 15 years old. I'm about the same age as these girls. And I remember, Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera, and anyone who's but not academics.
Not a former prime
necessarily
minister,
heads of Silicon Valley entrepreneurs, or Elon Musk wasn't a huge thing. Peter Thiel, they were just around a lot of men, and they were probably a lot of them faceless white men, frankly, and did not remember all of them. So yeah.
Okay, one more question.
Prince Andrew comes up frequently because they know him.
Right, he was obvious. He was one of the obvious. Okay, one more question. I know time's running short. As we approach this December 19th deadline for DOJ to release this stuff, number one, I am not confident that DOJ is going to properly
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex. Happy holidays from the Steelers and KDK TV. I'm Bob Palmieri, along with Missy Matthews. We'll be here shortly. It's a Tomlin Tuesday, and the Steelers delivered an early holiday gift to Steeler Nation last night with a 28-15 win over Miami to eliminate the Dolphins. And now the Steelers will have a big test coming up next Sunday, 425 KDK, against the 8-6 Detroit Lions, who are on the outside looking in. They'll be a desperate football team, but just about everybody in the NFL is desperate at this time. Mike Tomlin is set to address the media after that big win last night, so let's head to the head coach.
Good afternoon. It was slow going. They were playing a bunch of shell. They came in, they had a certain amount of pressure percentage that they played, and expected them to play maybe a little more one high. Now last week, Baltimore played a lot of one high, and we hit some shots down the field. So I expect them to play some more shell, but it was a lot of shell. So we had to be efficient, dink and dunk at times, and kind of take what was there.
Working on the shoes of Achane on the sideline. So Ollie Gordon is in the game. Tyreek Hill went down in week 4. Here is a shot for Waddle, underthrown and picked off by Asante Samuel. Rodgers really working the hard count tonight. Dolphins have not bitten, and there's DK Metcalf. As the ball is into Miami territory and a completion of 21 yards. They go quick. And a completion out on the edge. That's Gainwell, and that's a first down.
We've heard it through the field mics, and he's been unable to affect this group for Miami.
Here's a nice start. Jonnu Smith broke a tackle and then gets to tell the Miami sideline how good that play was.
Even though they're not mathematically eliminated, they're close.
Hayward under center. He gets shoved. No signal yet. Now it is. Touchdown, Steelers. They go on top. First rushing touchdown of the year for Connor. Warren out, Gainwell in. Quick snap. Gainwell finds a little room over the right side. Survived a hit. And out of bounds. See where they mark him. Try to go to the air here. Rodgers end zone's got his man. Touchdown, Marquez Valdez Scantling.
Scantling comes across. No one then is in man coverage running with him. And it's just an ISO route essentially on the free safety. And once he crosses his face, I think it'd be hard to walk away when you had a year like that.
Here's a blitz. Tagovailoa knocked down by Jalen Ramsey.
He's the guy who deserves more playing time.
On third down, got it to DK Metcalf. And fighting his way for the touchdown. Pure strength. Ashton Davis came oh so close. Steelers playing without TJ Watt. Defense is doing just fine without him at the moment. Tagovailoa brought down by Wilson. And this Dolphins offense cannot do anything. It's fourth down. Has taken over at left guard for Sam Oliver. Here is a toss. In the backfield, Jonnu Smith. And a rushing touchdown for big number 81, his first rushing score of the year. Steelers and the Dolphins makes it to the end zone.
Well, you got Darnell Washington and Adam Thielen, and between the two of them, look at the crease that they give him, and just an excellent job. If you're going to run tight.
We're going to go under 6 minutes to go in this game. Tagovailoa is sacked by Hayward.
We'll have a big test coming up next Sunday, 425 KDKA against the 8-6 Detroit Lions, who are on the outside looking in. They'll be a desperate football team, but just about everybody in the NFL is desperate at this time. Mike Tomlin is set to address the media after that big win last night, so let's head to the head coach.
Good afternoon. As always, I'll start with a quick roundup on our last performance from last night. As I said after the game, I thought we had a clear path to engineering victory. Certainly they had established a certain personality during their 4-game win streak. A major component of that was their run game, as I mentioned. They had averaged about 192 a game over the previous 5 games, and so certainly we had to minimize that, but it's just more than just stopping the run on specific downs per se. It's a collective approach, and I thought we did a nice job of minimizing that mode of producing victory for them, not only with the way that we played the run, but with the way we ran the ball offensively, the way we possessed the ball offensively. Us being aggressive on fourth down plays, particularly early on, was a strategic component of minimizing their run. Us getting off on third down was a major component defensively of us minimizing their run. They weren't able to get a new set of downs very often and established a rhythm that it produced to 192 per game. And certainly we thought if we could do that, we would position ourselves to maybe take the ball away. Had a big takeaway early on from Samuel, and certainly had other opportunities that didn't come to fruition throughout. We needed to take care of the football, and we certainly did that. It wasn't easy sledding there, particularly early, but as we found our rhythm and we were able to get some things going and produce some touchdowns. As the road gets narrow, you got to score touchdowns. Field goals don't necessarily get you out of stadiums, particularly as you're battling for playoff position and people are in the same mentality doing similar things. And so I thought our ability to score touchdowns in the red area was big, was a major component of it as well. Can't say enough about the many contributions that we got from people who had an opportunity to have expanded roles. As I often say, though, there's a fine line between being a Pro Bowler and a backup in this business. I just see it through that lens. These guys are at the tip top of the food chain in terms of what they do, and usually one man's misfortune is another man's opportunity, and there were certainly examples worthy of recognition. We talked a lot about it last night. Can't say enough about Dylan and what he was able to do for us at left tackle, for example. Kenny Gainwell did an awesome job, like he always does when called upon in an expanded role. Asante getting an opportunity to start and playing a lot of football for us. Guys like Herbig, although he's been called upon a lot in the past and certainly has delivered. Guys like he and Jack Sawyer had opportunities to play expanded roles as well. But it comes with this time of year. There's an attrition element to our game. That's why we take everyone's readiness very seriously, because we have to call on that again moving forward. Everyone does. And so it's important that you fortify your depths with capable people. We've worked to do that during the course of our journey and to continue to get those guys ready because you know it's coming. And so it's just good to see some of that happen. We certainly will have some more challenges, man, as we lean in on this week regarding some of those things. Isaac Seumalo got hurt last night. I don't know what his status is as I stand here today, but I would imagine he's certainly going to be limited at the early portions of the week, and we'll see where it leads us. The same thing could be said for Herbig with his hamstring. We'll see where it leads us. We had some guys that missed the previous game or games and are angling toward getting back. Probably the most favorable of those is Derek Harmon. He was probably healthy enough to play at the very end of last week, but as a young guy with limited rep opportunities, I didn't think it would be fair to him or for us to put him in uniform, and so he'll have an opportunity to get a complete week's work, get an opportunity to go back to his hometown and play some football. Excited about getting him back. He certainly has been an asset to us, particularly in terms of defending and stopping the run and anticipating what we're going to face this week, man. That'll be big. Some other guys who are working their way back. Pete's still in the protocol, so we'll let the protocol be our guide in terms of his availability. James Pierre was limited with a calf last week. We'll see where that leads us. I got no new news on TJ. I'm sure I will a little later in the week, but I hadn't heard any new updates regarding his availability or what that looks like as he starts to work his way back to us this week. And so no real news there. I'm certain that we have a lot of bumps and bruises associated with play. That's the nature of this thing. We'll work hard and smart, and sometimes that means being inclusive. And so we probably got a high-intensity walkthrough on our menu tomorrow in an effort to have as many people participate as we can, as opposed to running and practicing. But again, that's not outside the ordinary this time of year. You do what you need to do in an effort to get the collective ready and also get them to the stadium in as good a physical condition as you can get them as well. You certainly hope that that there's a cumulative effect of the daily work that we've had over the course of this journey that could be an asset to us, that we can summons up when we get pressed on a short week like this week. Now I'll give some time and attention to the Detroit Lions. Man, I just got a lot of respect for this group and how they go about their business. They're a competitive group. They're a physical group in all three phases. They're aggressive not only in play but schematically. Got to tip my cap to Coach Campbell and company for that. You see their personality on tape. I'll start first on defense. They've certainly absorbed a lot of attrition in recent weeks, particularly in the secondary, first at corner and then more recently at safety. But they've also done some things in terms of acquiring talent to help fortify those depths, some NFL players, some veterans. Much like we went out and acquired Pep and Doug and others, Asante, that have helped us out. More recently, they've acquired KZ, a former Steeler, that I'm sure is chopping at the bit to be a contributor to them. Arthur Millette, also a former Steeler. And so what they've put on tape and who they've played on tape in recent weeks might not necessarily be who they play in this game. And so we got a lot of respect for that. They're aggressive schematically. They play a lot of man-to-man. They get after you with a variety of blitz packages and so forth. Can't say enough about their linebacker tandem, very versatile. They play in all circumstances. Did a lot of research on Jack Campbell. We got a lot of Iowa guys in our program and, got a lot of respect for who he is as a football man and how he plays and his relationship with the game and his natural leadership skills. That was very evident going to Iowa and participating in their pro day efforts and getting to know those guys, taking them to dinner. He is certainly a natural leader and football player and man, and it appears from the outside that those characteristics have transferred to the professional level, and he's doing similar things for the Lions that he did at the University of Iowa. Certainly we got our hands full up front, minimizing their rush, starting first and foremost with Aiden. He is elite. He's a game wrecker. He just is. He's a top quality rusher. He's very aware in terms of ball aware, ball searching. His ability to produce fumbles and hunt the ball as he hunts the quarterback speaks for itself. He's got very good hand-eye coordination and fine motor skills for a big man. That was on display in his interception of that screen last week. But he's not a one-man gang. Muhammad is having a breakout year for him as a rushman. Davenport, obviously, is a former first-rounder in New Orleans Saints, is also a component of their collective. They got DJ Reader up front, a veteran run stopper, and so certainly they have a bunch of capable men, and I'm sure they're going to be chopping at the bit to get back on the winning track this week, and we just got respect for that as competitors. On the offensive side of the ball, man, they take very good care of the football, and it starts first with Goff. I think he's only thrown 5 interceptions on the season, and you couple that with his quick decision-making, he's got to have one of the top times to throw in football. He makes good and quick decisions. He certainly has some capable eligibles to distribute the ball to. St. Brown and Williams, man, are a formidable tandem. They also have some other guys that are playing extremely well in a lesser role in terms of volume or targets, but are playmakers nonetheless. It's not only about rushing the passer. If you're trying to minimize a guy like Goff who's functioning in the ways that he's functioning, he's completing 70% of his passes. He's not throwing the ball to the other team. We better utilize a lot of schematic strategies in terms of coverage makeups, man, zone, simulation pressures. We better work the bat passes, et cetera. It's not only about the rush in terms of getting him and them off rhythm. We better fight for each and every incompletion. And so that's our mindset as we lean in on the week. You couple that with the top-notch running game and that formidable run tandem that they have. We got a big week for us in terms of preparing for those guys. In terms of their running game, can't say enough about the demeanor of their collective. Certainly, I know their offensive line coach and run game coordinator, Hank Fraley, and I remember him as a player. They play as a collective the way he played. He is built that unit in his image. It is a gritty group. They finish. They take pride in terms of winning the line of scrimmage and waging the war of attrition in the run game. And so we'll be challenged in a big way in that regard. But again, it's December. The road's getting narrow, such is life in the big show, man. And we're all happy, obviously, to be a component of that. But we'll narrow our focus, man, and understand that we pay respect for this big game by living these moments day to day and having great days. It started for us early this morning or late last night, depending on your perspective as a staff. And it'll continue with the guys as they get into the building tomorrow in the effort to move forward towards Sunday. I'll pause and open up for questions.
Mike, you've mentioned that this time of year, games like this are why you were interested in bringing in Aaron Rodgers. He has said kind of much the same thing. Have you noticed anything palpable about him or anything detectable in these last couple games? Any difference in how he prepares or plays or the look in his eye, anything like that?
No, nothing relative to his process or his prep process. But it's just value that you can measure, value that you can't measure, and having a guy that's been there and done that. It benefits him. It benefits us as a collective. I think it raises the tide for the collective. It's just certain conversations and things that you don't even worry about. You know, we had a significant possession down late in that game, and he affords us an opportunity to run a misdirection pass, and you don't even have to tell him, hey, throw an incompletion or take a sack because we want the clock running. He knows that. He's lived that life, and so that's just one small example, but there's countless examples of benefits of having a guy with his level of experience, the quality of that experience, particularly this time of year as the road gets narrow.
After the game, Aaron was talking about some of the so-called cast-offs that made significant impacts for you. What have you learned over the years about what it takes to position midseason additions for success, and why is this specific group been able to make an impact quickly?
You know, I'm never surprised by that, to be honest with you. That's why we have cliches like the standard is the standard. One man's misfortune is another man's opportunity. It's not if, it's when, as it pertains to injury in our business. And so if you're in a position like mine, you better work your tail off to ready each and every man that's a part of the program and have that urgency daily. And I certainly do, and we do as a staff. But those are the guys that are deserving of the credit. I'll never ask guys to be patient. I'll ask them to work while they wait. And a lot of guys have done that. And we get performances like many of them displayed. It's just evidence that they have. And certainly some of them are going to get additional opportunities to do so, and maybe some new guys are going to get opportunities to do so as we move forward. That's just the nature of this thing. I think your ability to adapt and adjust and pivot often defines as a collective, and certainly we've had some opportunities to do so and have had some success at times, and we better keep digging because I just been on enough of these journeys. I know it's a component of it.
Mike, when you guys signed Kenny G, did you envision him being a higher volume guy than he was in Philly?
Absolutely. You know, Saquon casts a pretty large shadow, but we played that football team, and Kenny made some significant plays in that game against us, converting third downs early in that game that produced scoring drives. I think he converted 3 third downs that transferred to 17 points in the midst of that game. He also covered kicks in that game we played against him. He returns kicks, and so, you know, what we saw was a guy that was a football player first, that had a nice skill set to do a lot of things, and you know, had some upside because of the ridiculous shadow that Saquon cast. So I don't know that any of us are surprised by what he's doing or by what he's capable of, because we saw it firsthand in stadium as an opponent.
Mike, 2 areas where you guys have gotten a lot better in the last 2 weeks. Coming out of the locker room in the third quarter, you've been good in both the third quarters against against Baltimore in this past game, against Miami. What have you done better there, do you think? And what else did you do better in this game when it came to possessing the ball?
You know, I don't know that you can pinpoint a specific thing that you do better. I know that you better just keep working. You know, you don't always get the results that you desire immediately when you have an agenda, but if you believe in the agenda, you keep pounding away, and it might just be that result that we're finally breaking through in some areas that are producing the outcomes, but we might have been in the right neighborhood, knocking on the right doors for an extended period of time. I just think that's the challenge of decision-making and strategy in this business. Sometimes solutions come to you in an instant, and you see the fruit of that instantly. Sometimes your will and your commitment gets tested because you don't necessarily get what you're looking for immediately. We haven't done anything different, significantly different in the last 2 weeks in that area that we hadn't been working on, but certainly I agree with you. It's been moving in the right direction of late.
Like after the Bills game, Aaron kind of publicly challenged the pass catchers just to get on the same page, show up to things. The 2 weeks since, the offense has been clicking, the pass catchers' pass game has been a little bit more seamless. Is that a result of Aaron kind of challenging this group?
I don't know the challenge that you speak of, and so I wouldn't be the guy to speak to that. I'm sure you'll get an opportunity to speak to him in open locker room.
Mike, you mentioned the running backs earlier. It seems like Gibbs and Montgomery complement each other really well. What makes them so dynamic, and what do you think the keys are going to be to try to slow them down?
You know, I think first of all, they're talented as individuals. They are. They're talented runners, both guys. They certainly have a different skill set. Gibbs having the top end speed that he does, and Montgomery having the pick and vision and interior running talents that he does. And so they complement each other very well, but it's almost disrespectful to not acknowledge their talents as individuals. And I think any tandem that's really good, I think, has a couple of individuals in it that can do it, and they certainly can and do. They need no endorsement from me. I think they, as a collective, they got 21 rushing touchdowns this year. And so we better come, and we better come ready.
You guys have used more 11 personnel the last two weeks on offense. Was that something that Aaron Rodgers suggested? And what have you guys seen come from that as far as success-wise to open things up?
You know, sometimes it's just based on matchup. What's the best matchup for us relative to opponents? The Dolphins, for example, don't have a lot of depth at corner. Minka plays corner or nickel for them, and so it was probably more advantageous for us to play in 3 wide receiver sets and get Minka out of a more natural position into a less natural position. And so there's a lot of variables into that discussion and from a strategic standpoint, and we answer those and formulate those plans week in and week out, and so they're subject to change.
You elevated MVS from the practice squad.
I'm sorry?
You elevated or signed MVS to the active roster. What have you kind of seen and learned about him over the last month or so that he's been in the building?
You know, he certainly is a talented guy. He can run. For a taller guy, he can get in and out of break points, and he's got some NFL playmaking experience that's been an asset to us.
Has TJ been in the facility yet, and whether or not he can be cleared to practice? Do you expect him to be at practice this week?
I don't know if he's been in the facility yet because I've been in the dark room in the back. He might be in the facility as we speak, and so I don't have a lot of the answers to that, and I was just trying to be transparent when I said I didn't have any new information as I stood here today.
We have you in this setting as opposed to breathing down your neck after practice about this, but is there anything more you can tell us about what you learned about the dry needling technique, or how that might continue or not continue with your team?
I have no new information regarding that, none whatsoever.
How's Jack Sawyer progressed, and if you need to lean on him in a tough matchup against Penny Sewell, what would that be like?
You know, Jack is doing what a lot of young quality defenders do. They make the best with what you ask them to do, and they work in all areas and get better. And usually those that are playmakers in special teams eventually become playmakers on defense. And he certainly has been that for us. He's made some plays on teams. He made some plays on teams last night. And so I'm never surprised when they transfer that playmaking to the defensive side when they get more opportunities to do so. He's had some opportunities this year and has made some plays, has had a sack, has had an interception. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he displays that readiness, if he gets an expanded role opportunity this week.
Do you have to alter how you prepare defensively when you face a coach that's as aggressive on 4th down as Campbell is?
No, not really. You know, we live it down in and down out. You don't get an opportunity to win 4th down until you win 3rd down. And so that's the spirit in which we go about it.
Mike, is the tush-push or Steelers shove, whatever you want to call it, with Connor become more reliable for you guys, and how does that kind of impact your situational decision-making?
I think it's been reliable the whole time we've done it. Maybe we've only failed once in Chicago. It just speaks to the versatility that we have in the tight end room. We've talked a lot about it. We got a deep and diverse tight end group. Darnell is a point of attack run blocker. Jonnu is good run after. You saw that in a lot of ways. We threw him a screen. We pitched him a toss. Muth is a zone killer. You saw that last night. And Connor's a jack of all trades. He's a four-phase special teamer. He does things like that for us. And so I think that's just more of a reflective of the deep and diverse group that we have at that position.
Patrick Lee talked about the collective guys committing to their jobs and not trying to jump out and do other people's roles and that trust that's been forming. How do you as a head coach try to set a stage to fix those kind of problems when that leads to popcorn where it can come from any direction?
I think a component of it is continuity. And when you infuse new people in, you don't have a lot of continuity. Certainly over the last several weeks, we've established some continuity, particularly on the back end. For example, when we moved Jalen to free safety full-time and acquired Doug and some of that stuff, that began the continuity. And to have that discussion without continuity is not very realistic. And so we certainly have gotten better, but you expect to as a leader, and you also expect it to continue.
Is that continuity a big part of the process to when you guys use more 11 personnel when you don't normally, or when you switched from using a lot of single high to double high safety looks earlier in the season?
You jumped the size of the ball there. One time you said 11, and then another time you said one high or two high.
Right, I'm saying on either side of the ball, is that continuity help when it comes to trying to make those switches in season when you guys try to establish an identity?
There's a lot of layers to that question. You're stressing me out there. I answered the 11 question. It's week to week, and a lot of it is based on the matchup component of the game, and I gave you an example of last night. Now, what was the defensive component of that question?
Like earlier in the year, we guys used a lot of single high safety to start the year. You switched to a lot more two high safety. I'm just talking about the continuity in helping.
That's very much week to week, based on who we're playing and what they specialize in and what's required for us to minimize certain components of their attack or people.
Does that apply to? You haven't had a chance to really comb through the tape, but did Dylan Cook play well enough to maybe continue playing in that role even if Andres Pete is healthy?
We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. He certainly, I thought, did a nice job of representing himself last night. As I mentioned, though, we helped him schematically, but it is our job to do so. But he was a component of a successful winning outing, and so he deserves congratulations for that, and we'll see what this week holds.
What you were discussing with Chris there, and is that the matchup angle that you were discussing? You guys were very good in the middle of the field last night. DK was talking about finding the soft spots in the cover two. Can you still do that against a team like you said with Detroit who plays more man? You might not have as clear of an idea of what they're doing in the secondary because of their attrition.
It's two totally separate discussions. Miami played a lot of shell. They rolled up their corners, and they played two high safeties a bunch. Detroit does a significant amount less than that. And so we'll do what we need to do to be successful and move the ball this week, and it may dictate that we do things differently.
When Pierre is cleared, does he automatically become your top outside?
We'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Mike, was Herbig's hamstring, was that aggravation of what he dealt with earlier in the year?
I don't know, to be quite honest with you. We just played last night, and I hadn't had a chance to get a thorough update on some of the details regarding individual injuries and where they are and if they're brand new or re-aggravations of past injuries. I just know he has a hamstring.
Mike, what does it say about Ben Skoron's special teams value that you played a guy listed as a wide receiver on the depth chart with a cast on his hand?
He's a football player first. We've talked a lot about it. He's highly productive. He's a functional tackler. He's a big guy for the space that he plays in. It gives him a matchup advantage, particularly when he's in one-on-one circumstances. And so we're thankful that he's capable and willing, even in less than ideal circumstances. And let's see what he has for us this week.
Asante played every snap a couple weeks ago. He hadn't played a game in 15 months, whatever. Were you watching that? Was that something to watch? And I guess he passed the test conditioning-wise and whatever.
To be honest with you, I wasn't even watching it. He's the type of guy that he's in shape 12 months a year. Most corners are. He displayed that in the short period of time that he's been here in practice settings in terms of taking card defensive reps and taking defensive reps. And so it was of very little concern to me or to us in terms of his participation last night. And not only that, but he's been an every down player when he was in LA, and so it wasn't something that was the first time for him or something that was foreign to him.
What have you seen from Adam Thielen when he's not getting targeted, that he's provided value to the team outside of that?
Man, he's excited to be here. He's expressed that. He's a hand in the pile guy. I thought he was very active in the run game last night, for example. You know, you have a lot of ways to impact the game other than touching the football, and certainly his contributions have displayed that in a short period of time.
Anything else?
Aaron praised both him and MVS last week for their detailed work and the timing of getting things done. What does that do for an offense to set a tone for everyone else when you see veteran guys come in and inject that kind of detail?
You know, I just think that's the benefit of veteran guys.
If Sam Alou can't play, does Spencer go right in the guard, or does he keep his role doing what he does?
It's early in the process. You know, we did an in-game adjustment last night where we brought Ryan McCullum in, and he did both with a full week to prepare. We may do similar things. We may take a different approach. But larger than that, more important than that, I'm not ready to rule out Isaac at this juncture.
All right.
Great. Thanks.
All right, that's Mike Tomlin with his thoughts about the win last night, and also a look ahead to the Detroit Lions. Formidable test when you consider how productive they've been on offense, averaging 30 points. Injuries play a role. What are
that, but moving forward, as Peck in game, Nick Herbig, his hamstring coach, said they should be at least limited. We'll kind of find out more about that tomorrow. He said will be more of a high intensity walkthrough than a normal practice due to the short week. No update on TJ Watt. I know a lot of people wanted to know about that, and it does sound like Derek Harmon will get to go back to his hometown. He should be able to play, tracking to play with that knee injury. James Pierre is still dealing with his calf, and Andreas Pete is still in the concussion protocol. So all things to monitor as we get ready for week 16. I almost
week
jumped
16.
ahead.
We're
Yes.
already at week 16. It's unbelievable. But I tell you, without Watt and without Harmon last night, the run defense really stood out against a really talented Miami running back named Devon Achane. He was coming in averaging like 140 yards per game, and they limited him as best they could.
Absolutely, and I thought, you know, the Dolphins came out throwing the ball, knowing that the Steelers were going to want to try to stop the run, but man, that defense, Patrick Queen, just so many guys, Cam Hayward, that you can point to that had big nights and played physical and definitely out-physicaled the Dolphins.
The Steelers have had their many tests against really good running backs and running teams. They'll get another this week in Detroit. Maybe one of the best 1-2 punches in the game. We'll talk about that and everything pertaining to the Steelers, who are now 8-6 and in control of the AFC North. That's all coming up as we continue on this Tomlin Tuesday right here live. Thank you for joining us on KDK Plus and Steeler digital platforms.
Get all your Steelers gear direct, black and gold. Feel you. And of course, shops.
They were playing a bunch of shell. You know, they came in, they had a certain amount of pressure percentage that they played, and expected them to play maybe a little more one high. Now last week, you know, Baltimore played a lot of one high, and we hit some shots down the field, so I expect them to play some more shell, but it was a lot of shell. So we had to be efficient, dink and dunk at times, and kind of take what was there, and then we, you know, once we started to run the ball, everything opened up, and the action game opened up, and hit a couple keepers, finally converted some third downs, held the football. That drive was a big one. After they got the field goal, right, to go up 3-0, we went. Then they had the short kick and went 60. You know, for us to keep the ball for the last, you know, 4, whatever it was on the clock, and give no time was good. Then we came out and we got a first down and we scored. So that was good to double up like that. Kept the momentum going. A lot of guys made plays today. You know, would like to get some more opportunities for, obviously for DK, but Kenny had a fantastic game, 26 combined yards. Pat had some nice plays. Marquez had a touchdown. That was awesome. Asante Samuel, you know, had a pick. Junior, I should add, because I played against his dad. So it's kind of what I said after the game. There's some cast-offs if you look at our roster, which it makes it really special. You know, Kenny Gainwell signed a next to nothing contract. You know, Connor Hayward, an afterthought, had a touchdown run. You know, Marquez been on a couple teams. Adam Thielen got cut. Samuel was on the street for a long time. So it says a lot about the character of the guys we brought in.
Our fans are here. Give them something to cheer about today. The crowd at Acrisure is so loud.
There's nothing like game day in Pittsburgh.
Oh my, TJ! This defense is swarming. And it's kicked off. Wow, what a catch! Get two.
Bring your message to life with over 100 diverse AI avatars available in multiple languages with realistic.
You know, it was slow going. They were playing a bunch of shell. You know, they came in, they had a certain amount of pressure percentage. Then we came out and we got a first down. And after the game, there's some cast-offs if you look at our roster of the guys we brought in.
Do you consider yourself one of those cast-offs too?
No, I'm not a cast-off.
Aaron, DK talked about your guys' ability to hit the cover two when they went to their too high. You guys attacking the middle part of the field. He had two big plays there. What can you say about just the work that you guys have been to put into guys? DK talked about.
Consider yourself one of those cast-offs too?
No, I'm not a cast-off.
Aaron, DK talked.
Consider yourself one of those cast-offs too?
No, I'm not a cast-off.
Aaron, DK talked about your guys.
One of those cast-offs too?
No, I'm not a cast-off.
Aaron, DK talked about your guys' ability to hit the cover two when they went to their too high. You guys attacking the middle part of the field. He had two big plays there. What can you say about just the work that you guys have been to put in to make sure to capitalize when teams do that, even when they disguise it?
I don't think we did that a whole lot. First 24 minutes of the game, but you know, we started to get some things going. Obviously, I had one to DK early for 22, but the play by DK was one of the better plays I've seen in my 21 years. There's play by Dallin Driver back in 2009, which was one of the greatest catch and runs I've ever seen. But that was pretty special. You know, tight window catch, juke, hard stiff arm. That was fun to see him get that one. But there was a lot of like little plays that made a big difference. I thought all three of Pat's catches were adjustments, and where he did really good stuff. And we haven't got Pat involved as much as obviously I would liked, but those are three impactful plays.
Yeah, and how important to win back-to-back games? Something you guys hadn't done since early October.
Has it been that long? Yeah. I mean, these are two huge games. Obviously, the division game is the most important game, but these guys have won four straight coming in. We know, well, some of us, maybe a few of us, know about how obviously the first way to get to the playoffs is win your division. There's having beaten Baltimore already. There's obviously tiebreakers that come into effect, including divisional record, conference record. So winning your AFC games are really important. Keeping the one game lead plus the head-to-head is big as well.
You had a stretch of 13 consecutive completions. It's your highest completion percentage since 2014. Did you feel like you were locking into a rhythm early? What kind of led to that?
Probably the cold weather. I'm a California kid, but I've always enjoyed playing in the cold weather. I feel like there can be some advantages to the offense, especially when you're playing on a field that's a little beat up or super slick, like Green Bay became over the years. So I've always enjoyed that. I'm gifted with hands that can handle a cold ball and a ball that's a little slick when the weather gets cold like this. So always been able to throw it pretty good, but that's doesn't tell the whole story. There were some nice catches. There were some good adjustments. There were some dink and dunks. But I knew I needed to be efficient today, especially if I didn't play a bunch of shell, and I feel like we were pretty efficient.
What was the impact Kenny G had in this game?
Yeah, I mean, it's really every game. I think the run that he had, 38 yards, I believe, on just a simple inside zone week, just his vision. It's just fun to watch. I can't tell you exactly what I call him every week because there's some expletives in there, but I love playing with him. I really do. I mean, he is as smart as they come. He is super smart, and I still cannot believe what we got him for. I told him a long time ago my goal was to get him paid because I've been a fan of his since he was in Philly and thought that every time he went in the game, something good happens. And just to be able to play with him and the type of guy that he is, man, I can't say enough good things about Kenny. Every single game, it seems like he comes up with impactful plays and makes guys miss and catches the ball. I mean, I was telling who was that? I think it was Marquez on the sideline. I just like, one of the most impressive things is to watch us like on Friday practice just do pat and go drill, which is just an over the shoulder drill. He is as fluid as anybody on the team catching the football. And again, for a guy that's making damn near vet minimum, he's been a tremendous asset to our team this year.
Aaron, you guys have won back-to-back games against teams that have won 4 out of their last 5. Do you feel like you guys are starting to play your best ball that you have this season? And what's clicking for you guys that you see working for this team right now?
Well, I think the defense has played really well the last couple of weeks. Obviously, we're up 28-3 at one point. I thought I might get to take a seat on the bench and let Mason get in there, but they got good football players. They made a couple plays, but to hold them to 15 points, it's a game we should win. Last week, 22 points, game we should win. Offensively, I feel like Art got into a really good rhythm today, especially second quarter on, and it wasn't his fault in the first quarter. We just didn't execute very well. We put ourselves behind the chains a few times, but him and I got a real good relationship. Spent a lot of time together during the weeks, and I felt like he was, really good situationally with the calls. And then we converted, I think, 3 4th downs as well. But if you look at the big stat that's been killing us a lot of the season is the time possession, and today we had quadruple 4s, or 3s, sorry, quadruple 3s. So, we're obviously up by 6 and change in that department, which was really important.
Aaron, you talked about wanting to play meaningful December football. That was one of the reasons you wanted to come here and play.
Keep playing, yeah.
Your play tonight, I mean, does it feel different in December? I mean, Ben was talking to us before the game and said he still, when it's in the fourth quarter and when he's watching the game, he still feels it, like that adrenaline sort of pump. And I'm curious, is it different for you in December than it might be in September?
Well, 22, we were 4-8 at one point. We won 4 straight and gave ourselves a chance. 23, I played 4 plays. 24, we weren't very good. So it's been a while since been a part of stuff like this. Nothing changes. It's just, I feel real comfortable in this environment. Obviously, the crowd was really good tonight, but I feel comfortable in the cold weather, and I've always been able to throw pretty good in the cold over the years in Green Bay, and it can be an advantage if you embrace it.
Talk about that tight today.
Guys. 1, 2, 1.
You talked about that tight window to DK earlier, and you talked about the cold weather. We kind of like to call it the zone, or that part where you're just feeling it. Is that fair to say that you're kind of in that realm tonight, or no?
I felt good. I feel like to be in the zone, maybe there'd be some more like down the field shots. I mean, it wasn't because of the defense they were playing, the soft coverage, especially at the safety position, there wasn't a ton of down the field shots. So I think it was a very efficient game. But I expect in that type of game to be efficient. And obviously in this case, we caught the ball and we got open. But the zone is a state, the flow state is, they like to put the tag on it now. It's like, that's obviously the desired destination every single week, but it's all about efficiency and being smart with the football.
Last one, Kevin. Yes, Aaron, very balanced offense today. 28 points. You were able to run as well as pass the ball. So moving forward, how much should we expect from this offense?
You guys can expect whatever the hell you want, but we were 4-13 on 3rd down. A lot of that's in the first half and the 4-minute drill. But 3 of 3 on 4th down was good. We finally had more, 62 plays, which we haven't been doing in a while. Obviously efficient throwing the football. We had 3 sacks. One of them was on me. Keep the clock going in the 4th quarter, so really just 2 sacks. 3 for 3 in the red zone. We haven't been the most dynamic, explosive offense this season, but I feel like we've been good in the red zone. I don't know where we're at league-wide, but we got to be in the, upper half at minimum, I would assume. And, we've had stretches where we played good football. I think tonight was the first time we had complimentary football in all 3 phases, and that's the standard. So we're going to try and meet that next week in Detroit, or this week in Detroit. Thank you.
Thanks,
Good night.
Working on the shoes of Achane on the sideline, so Ollie Gordon is in the game. Tyreek Hill went down in week 4. Here is a shot for Waddle under
have said they believe that he is responsible for these murders, but of course the prosecutors have to lay out the evidence that they have in charging documents and then eventually before a court, before a judge as well. And so we're looking to see what those actual details are, and if he is indeed charged with murder, what type of charge are we talking about? Do authorities believe this is something that was potentially premeditated and planned? Was this something that was more, a crime of passion, kind of in the heat of the moment, as they say? Authorities will have to, back up whatever the charge they have, and so we're looking to see what that evidence will be, guys. As you mentioned, just any next couple hours, we're waiting to hear from the chief prosecutor here in LA about the case.